Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of shirim on the inner world of redemption. And today what we're going to be speaking about is Shemo Shel Mashiach, the name of Mashiach, the name of redemption. And what we'll begin with is the reality of such a thing, the reality that there's a notion of a name of Mashiach. We're generally oriented towards the emergence of Mashiach, the arrival of Mashiach, waiting for the arrival of Mashiach. But a question is asked in Chazal about Mashmo, what is the name of Mashiach? And the reason that there's an implication of there being a name of Mashiach even prior to Mashiach's arrival is what Chazal tell us in Bereshis Rabbah, that there were 6 things that were created before the creation of the world. Those 6 things which represent realities that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed before creation, meaning to say that these are things that are fundamental. These things will emerge no matter what, because they were there even prior to the interruption of creation. And those 6 things that existed before the creation of the world were the Beis Hamikdash, the Ruach Elokim, which is the Kisei HaKavod, the Avos HaOlam, Shemo Shel Mashiach, the name of Mashiach, Klal Yisrael, and the Torah. There's another girsa that also brings Gehenim into the 7 things. It adds 7 things as to what existed prior to the creation of the world. So we see in the name of Chazal that there's an idea that the name of Mashiach precedes the existence of the world. And like we've said, in these shirim, in the inner world of redemption shirim, we're not focusing on the historical emergence of Mashiach. We're not focusing on the things that are far beyond our capacity to focus on, but rather we are focusing on what needs to be done in our place and in our time right here, right now. As Rav Pinchas Karitzer says, the reason that Mashiach has to come behesach hadas, the reason, as Chazal say, that it's impossible to calculate when Mashiach is going to come, it's impossible to calculate the arrival of redemption, because calculation is something that is rooted in this worldly orientation. And the arrival of Mashiach is something that shatters the notion of this worldly orientation. And therefore, it is impossible to grasp that which is going to break the system of our understanding through the tools of our current understanding. And for that reason, the graspability or the knowledge of the actual arrival of redemption is something that is beyond the capacity of human grasp. It doesn't mean that a person stops trying to attach themselves to it. The way that we attach ourselves to it in every day and every moment is a chakalo b'chol yom sheyavo, waiting for it, patiently waiting without knowing exactly what it is going to be. And when it comes to that territory and when it comes to that area, it's something that we daven for. Every word of the Torah that we're sharing when it comes to Mashiach should be a tefillah from Mashiach Mamish. But until then, what we're doing is we're abstracting the concept of Mashiach Mamish, of actual redemption, and we're illuminating it within our own minds, within our own hearts. And ultimately, the basis of these shirim is that we all have the secret place of Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk's room in our mind, that there exists in the mind of each and every person. There exists within the storehouses of the neshama of each person the capacity to live as if everything is okay right here, right now, to live with a perspective of hasameach bechelko, someone who is happy with their lot. And as the Vitebsker famously said, and as the Slonim Tzadikim take from the Vitebsker and make over and over into a general klal, that Sameach bechelko, joy with one's lot, is not simply something that applies to the physical materiality of a person's life, as if it's about my possessional strength in this world. But joy with one's lot also applies to one's nature of spirituality. It applies to me being able to reflect on each and every moment and to say, it's good, it's tov ma'od, Mashiach is here in this moment. And in order for me to see if there's something that is actually fixed, I need to go outside of this moment because this moment is already fixed. That's the secret of the Vitebsker's room. And each and every person has access to that place. And each and every person has the possibility of entering into that place of Sameach Bechelko, of finding redemption in our days. And when it comes to tasting redemption in our days, we have a general principle, and this is a teaching that is brought down in the back of Eretz HaSvi al Chumash. The Eretz HaSvi, which is the Torah of the Klushagavar Gon, Schus Yagen Aleinu Hashem Yimkom Domo, incredible teachings of Rav Aryeh Tzvi Frimer, Hashem Yimkom Domo. And in the back, there was a kuntris, Zichron Kedoshim, I believe it's referred to as, which I'm forgetting which Talmud it was or which Ram in Chachmei Lublin was writing these teachings. And it's Chaval because I believe that the person was also Neherag al Kiddush Hashem in the Shoah. So we'll try and remember the name afterwards and I'll share it. But ultimately, he had a teaching that I saw a very long time ago that has always stuck in my mind. He says that when it comes to the arrival of Mashiach, when it comes to the arrival of Mashiach in a general way, as well as for each and every individual person in their own experiences, we have an idea that that there's going to be a laughter and a joy. There's going to be a laughter and a joy. And what's the laughter and the joy? The laughter and the joy that is going to emerge when exile ends and when Mashiach arrives in our individualized moments of redemption from exile, as well as the general framework of redemption from exile. The laughter is going to come about because of the recognition, Hayinu kecholmim. Hayinu kecholmim. We were like dreamers. It's going to be revealed with the arrival of redemption that our previous orientation, our previous stuckness, our previous perception, our previous assumption about the essential nature of how things actually are, and the rigidity and the stuckness that we have in accordance to those thought constructs and assumptions and presumptions and biases, etc., it will be revealed that we were like dreamers, that just as in a dream, things are not exactly what they seem, and in truth, what seems to be the most significant is very often the most insignificant, and vice versa, where that which is insignificant is revealed to carry the deepest truths, like the book of the Zohar, where all of the strangers and the donkey drivers and the seemingly incidental characters that interrupt the scene are ultimately the ones who carry the depths of secret. That's the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai comes out and teaches that everything that appears to be accidental is very often, very possibly holding the secret of that which is most essential. And it treats us and it forces us to really reorient the way that we look at our lives. Instead of breaking reality down into essential and inessential, we come to realize that everything is essential, except that the essential nature of things expresses itself in one of two ways. There are things that express themselves as essential, where it's clear that they're essential to us, and therefore we access that which is essential through those things. And then there are those things that appear to be inessential, the tafel of our life, which are not truly inessential, because nothing is inessential, and therefore it's an inessential way of coming to that which is essential. But that's the secret of the dream, of the undoing of our knowledge about how things go. And we're going to come to see that the suffering and the difficulty and the concealment and all of those things that we feel so intensely and we feel so real as the person who is experiencing the dream feels about the reality of the dream in the moment that the dream is taking place, where they are convinced of the reality of the dream, in spite of the fact that the reality of the dream is an actual non-reality. Nevertheless, it doesn't diminish the reality of these processes, but what will be revealed is that they weren't as real. They weren't real in the way that we felt that they were real, and there were other ways of orienting ourselves towards them, and there were other ways of freeing ourselves from them, of awakening to a dream within a dream, of finding the ability to change and shift the dream, the ability to understand the secret of the dreamscape of my experience in this worldliness. And when we say that Hayinu Kecholmim, it's going to be revealed that all of the concealment was like a dream. So this tzaddik, Hashem Yom Domo, from the Zichron Kedoshim, in the back of the Eretz Asfiyah Lachumish, he says as follows. He says, we have a general principle in the ninth parak of Brachos. The ninth parak of Brachos is the parak about dreams, which is certainly the storehouse of all of the depth of dream theory, of dream understanding, of the art of a dream, of the psychology of a dream, of the nature of being in a waking dream, the orientation of life towards a dream, all comes from that place. The ostes is always the goodness that is hidden within itself. The Ishbitzer said that anything that starts with a 9 or any ninth pasuk contains a deep secret, because that deep secret is the light of Yesod, the tzaddik Yesod Olam, that Or HaGanuz, that hidden light that was reserved for the tzaddikim, that light that Yosef HaTzaddik was capable of uncovering in the depths of exile. And Yosef HaTzaddik is the ostes, and Yosef HaTzaddik was the interpreter of dreams. Yosef HaTzaddik was the one who was able to look at that which appeared to be inessential and reveal the essential nature of it, and to reveal the topsy-turvy nature of how we perceived reality to be, and ultimately coming to the true understanding that when the brothers come and they're afraid that Yosef is going to be mad, he says, you thought you were doing something negative, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu had other ways of seeing it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had other ways of carrying it out. That's the secret of the chalom, the bal hachalomos. The dream is the recognition that my perception is not nearly as sturdy as I thought it is, and that koach belongs to the tzaddik. The tzaddik has the ability to reveal that life is a dream, and ultimately to bring about the interpretation of the dream, which is why the ninth parak, the ostes in brachos the rosh tzaddik, that the secret of brachos, the secret of shas that starts with brachos, is the secret of brachos the rosh tzaddik, that there's a tzaddik in the world, that there's tzaddikim in the world, that there's Mashiach tzidkenu in the world, Moshe Rabbeinu in the world, Rashbi in the world, that have the ability of drawing down brachos. That's why shas starts with brachos, so that it can bring refuah to the body in this world. And the ninth parak within Maseches Brachos, which is brachos is bo keser. It's the osios of bo keser. Brachos is the light of keser. Brachos is the light of the chalom. It's the light of the dream, which is the punctuation point of the choilem that kind of orients us to that point that there's a voice that draws me upwards. It's the keser of the choilem Chelem, that gives birth to the revelation of the Chalom. So what we're saying is that the ninth parak within Maseches Brachos, which is Bo Keser, which is the secret of the Chalom, which is the secret of Brachos L'Rosh Tzaddik, is the secret of Pitron HaChalomos. And it's from that place that Yosef HaTzadik comes along. And just as Yosef HaTzadik elevated himself out of exile, surrounded by people who were other than a Jewish orientation, the first way that he did it was through the interpretation of dreams. We also have this in Mashiach ben Yosef elements later on in history, specifically by Sigmund Freud, who ultimately gave the royal road to the unconscious, revealing the deep way of trying to come to terms with the fact that we don't know the difference between essential and inessential, conscious and unconscious. So just like Yosef HaTzadik, lahavdil, he was the one who penetrated into a secular culture and trying to show his wisdom, and it was specifically through the interpretation of dreams, which was the first book that he wrote. All of that is to come back to the teaching that we're trying to say, which is that there's a klal in the ninth parak of brachos that teaches us about the interpretation of dreams that tells us as follows, that the interpretation of the dream follows the interpreter of the dream. Meaning to say, the great secret of the interpretation of dreams is that which appears to be most significant is really insignificant, and that which appears to be insignificant is really significant. And both of them are essentially significant in teaching us that. And usually we think that the nature of the dream is what's most important, what happens in the dream and what I see in the dream and the ideas in the dream and how I feel about the dream afterwards. But what the secret of dream interpretation is coming to teach, and the secret of dream analysis in the most abstract, general way in terms of the psychology of the self and its day-to-day moments, where life is a dream and our consciousness is a process of the interpretation of the dream. One must not be asleep in order to dream. We're shikar v'lo mi'ayin. We're all asleep. And my Saba used to point out, and there's a beautiful teaching I saw afterwards from Rav Shimon Schwab, that what we see by Adam HaRishon is that Hashem puts Adam HaRishon to sleep, but the Torah never says that Adam HaRishon was woken up, and that there's an element to say that we're still in that terdema, and that we're still dreaming, and that's why the book of the Zohar is the dream. It's the book of Adam HaRishon waking up again to the process of Adam, David, and Mashiach. And instead of thinking that the content of the dream is what's most important, we minimize the content of the dream and we say, no, it's really the interpretation of the dream that is most significant. It goes after the interpretation. It's the subjective awareness and the things that I choose to look at and the things that I choose to value and the narrative that I choose to cultivate for myself in accordance with my desire to hear what I would like to hear and disregarding the rest. At that point, that becomes the real understanding of the dream, as if to say that interpretation is the deepest secret. It's not what we see, and it's not what we think we see, but rather it's the way that we choose to interpret the reality in our lives that becomes the true Pitron HaChalom. And Zok the Zichron Kadoshim, that just as Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to be like waking up out of a dream, so too the halachos of interpretation of dream are going to apply to Mashiach as well. And just as in the interpretation of a dream, the dream really follows the interpreter's interpretation of the dream, so too when it comes to Mashiach. What is Mashiach going to be? What is this thing, this redemption that we're waiting for so often in our individual lives where we're davening Karve el Nafshi Giyala? What is it? It's going to go in accordance with the interpreter of the dream. Each and every person is going to see the redemption of the self in the lens that they choose to see the redemption of the self. And that is going to be the limited space in which the redemptive nature of the self emerges. Now, other Svarim HaKadoshim talk about this is the danger of a person who misunderstands the secret of redemption, like Bantish the Silent. Bantish the Silent, that famous story of this impoverished yid who goes up to Shemayim and is offered everything. And in his meekness and in his humility, all he asks for is a simple loaf of bread with butter. If a person yearns for small things, then their redemption is going to appear small to them. But if a person yearns for big things, then redemption is going to appear tremendous and it's going to be larger than large. Nevertheless, what we see is that ultimately, just as the dream follows the interpretation of the dream, so too the arrival of redemption is going to follow our interpretation of redemption. Redemption stops being something objective, especially the moments of redemption that we experience in our own hearts prior to actual redemption, but it becomes a subjective process. What do I see as redemption? And in accordance with my vision of redemption, that's what redemption is going to be like. What I expect at the moment of redemption of the self is going to be how I experience redemption. Just like a dream goes following the interpreter, meaning to say that there's no fixed meaning inherent within the dream itself, and we can spend our entire life trying to pick up the stones and uncover the hints and what's missing, this and that, in the dream to discern its true meaning, while in truth, the truest meaning of it all was totally always and dependent upon interpretation, because it is the search for meaning and the development of meaning which is the most essential secret of the dream. And so too with redemption in the personal sense, that hayinu kecholmim, that redemption is going to be what I perceive it to be. And each and every person needs to uncover what redemption is going to be for them. What is it that I'm yearning for? What is it that I want to break free from? And where is it that I want to see myself in the next moment? In order to move forward one step at a time, a person has to do two things. They have to envision the difficulty that they encounter in being stuck in the place that they're at, and they have to envision the place that they would like to go to. Both are fundamentally necessary. There's a vayetze and there's a vayishlach. There's a leaving a place and there's going to a place. There's a sur meira and there's an aseh tov. There's a removal from the previous stage of concealment and a movement towards the next stage of revelation. I need to learn how to orient myself towards what is it that I'm seeking in my life? What is it? Is the redemptive pulsation at the heart of myself? What am I truly seeking? Because I can live a life of thirst. I can live a life of tsimaon. I can live a life of riboy teshuka and just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for redemption. And instead of actually experiencing that moment-to-moment redemption, I'm still waiting. And I think I might not be worthy of it. I think I might not be deserving of it. But in truth, I've just never named what it is that I'm searching for. And therefore, nothing can arrive if I haven't identified what it is that I would like to experience. And when it comes to identifying what our individual moments of redemption are, what is that hargasha? What is that moment of calmness in the self that is emergent when a person knows that they've encountered a moment of of being okay in this world? When we give terms to it, when we name it, when we're able to identify it, when we're able to give it shape, we make it far more accessible for us. Instead of endless yearning without destination, simply because the destination in our minds doesn't have a name, we can transform the process of our yearning for individual redemption and the inner redemption that takes place in a moment-to-moment, day-by-day process. By naming it, by identifying the general terms of it, we open ourselves up to the possibility of truly tasting it. This is the secret of the arrival of Mashiach being dependent on a person's interpretation of it. And if I can't identify the destination towards where I would like to go, then I am going to wander aimlessly, and I might convince myself that the aim is too far from me, or that I'm not deserving of the aim, and all of the various reasons and rationalizations I'll give myself for not really identifying what it is that I would like to break on through towards. What is it that I want to move towards? Is it more Yishuv Hadas? Is it more Emuna? Is it more Simcha? Is it more connectivity? Is it more calmness? Is it more stability? Is it more laughter? Is it less of this? Is it less of that? Each person needs to winnow in and highlight and be mitzamsem and uncover for themselves what their Kodesh HaKadoshim is. What is it that I so desperately seek in this world? Because we all know far too well the desire and the cravenous desire and the yearning that seeks to experience that moreness that we so desperately feel rests right beyond the limit or the horizon of this moment. But if we never define to ourselves what that moment is, what that feeling is, what that experience is, then we're never going to be able to know whether we're experiencing it in the taste way that we can experience it prior to its actual arrival. And here emerges the necessity of the name of Mashiach, Shemo Shel Mashiach. Shemo Shel Mashiach, the name of Mashiach, exists prior to the creation of the world. Mashiach himself doesn't exist prior to the creation of the world. Actual redemption does not exist prior to the creation of the world. But the name of Mashiach, the notion of Mashiach, what is the general frame towards which I would like to see my life go towards? What is my orientation? Where is the tachlis? Where do I see myself going? Every tzaddik has their nekuda pnimis. Rabbi Nachman is able to say, "Kol makom ani holech rak le'eretz Yisrael." Everything is about Eretz Yisrael. Everything is about emuna. Everything is about speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For Slanim, everything is about Yishuv Hadas. Everything is about Sameach Bechelko. For the Priya Aretz, everything is about ayin, everything is about bittul, everything is about negating the self and understanding the shiftless ha'amiti of ha'anachnuma. For the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, it's dveikus. For the Vilna Gaon, it's Torah Lishma. For the Ramchal, it's the yichud of the Sof and the Rosh. For Rav Hutner, it's the understanding of the transformation of the Torah to the poetic power that it represents. Each and every tzaddik has their own particular way of identifying that point of orientation that a person wants to experience in this world. But we all know them in our general names of Simcha and Yishuv Hadas and Menucha and Nechama and Simcha Amitis, all of these things, Tuv Tam L'das Lamdeni. We want that light, but what we have to do is we have to define that light for ourselves. We've been talking so much about the Or HaGanuz, that light that is hidden away at the very place, that separation, that partition between the Moichas Tima, my graspability, and the Golgalta, my ungraspability of what I don't know and what comes down from HaKadosh Baruch Hu into my mind. That separation, that Kruma da Avira, that partition that seems to separate the two, is the very site where that hidden light is hidden. In our grasping towards breaking free from the limit of being human, yet always coming in contact with it and retreating backwards and then running upwards again, and the ruts of a shov, and the running and the returning, and the touching and the not touching that Rabbi Nachman describes in that 24th teaching of Mati v'loy Mati, by the perpetual refinement and self-refinement through the attempt to surge forward and the necessity of retreating backwards beyond from that separation that separates the mind from the infinite Kavyachol. It's specifically that place that the Or HaGanuz is hidden. And it's that place where we can taste the secretion of it in our moment-to-moment life, and the secret of bringing Mashiach in our days, of Elemecha Tira B'chayecha, of Karvel Nafshi Giyala, of opening that door to the Vitebsker's room in our house. But in Or HaGanuz, a concealed light, if I don't have any framing to it, if I don't have handles to place on it, if I have no orientation as to where it's going, if I don't know which tzaddik I'm connecting myself to in this particular moment, which sefer am I trying to connect to, which nakuda of or am I trying to connect to, what are the terms and the conditions of the goodness that I would like to see happen, then the or very often remains concealed because we haven't given it the definition necessary to try and grasp it. Now, obviously, when it comes to any nature of redemption of the self is ungraspable. Just as God, Kavyachol, is ungraspable, so too the self at its core is ungraspable, because the self at its core is a reflection of the nitzuts, of the chelek Elokai Mimal, and the part of the whole has the same halachos of the whole. Memela, if we become the receptacle and we become the levushim that carry through shlichus the nitzuts of the Shechina, which is the chelek Elokai Mimal, mamish, then at that point the self becomes unknowable as well. And that's the secret burial place of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the secret burial place of the tzaddikim. That's the secret burial place of Mashiach Tzidkenu, who is buried at the innermost point of the heart of each and every person, unknown specifically because it's identifiable with that deepest place within ourselves. When it comes to defining the nature of inner redemption and giving names to it, and trying to apply a name to it so that it's graspable for us, so that we can know when we experience a moment of breakthrough, when we can experience a moment of menuchas hanefesh and true menuchas emes she'atarot seba. Naming it is not trying to pin it down or define it in any way. Naming it, as we're going to see, is the attempt, the all too human attempt to give a name to the experience that will perpetually exceed the graspability of our minds. We can experience moments of redemption, but in terms of defining what those moments are, we'll always come up empty-handed, because it's only within the osios hamachshava, it's only within the inner experience of thought that we begin to uncover the secret of that place, the secret of that feeling. So the attempt to name and the attempt to give names to all of these things is not to give an absolute name to them, but rather to create some semblance of a graspability that we can have to draw down this light of Oilamecha Tir B'chayecha. As the Kamarna Rebbe says in Nesiv Mitzvosecha, there's no way to define when a person experiences a moment of ha'alas hanitzutz, when a person experiences a moment of actual redemption, where a person has gone through that three-stage process of hachna'a, of submission, of havdalah, of separation, and hamtaka and sweetening that represents the emergence from silence into speech, which represents the redemption of all things. But in the end of the day, we have to still continue to try and give shape to it, to try and give names to it. And that's the secret of Shemo Shel Mashiach. Because one of the most amazing things when we look at the Gemara that discusses this Shemo Shel Mashiach, and this question of what is the name of Mashiach, when it comes to identifying what is it that gives shape to the potential of this experience that I just know when it happens, like the Kamarna says, I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you what it feels like. So at that place, what is it? What is the name of it? Is there one specific name to it? Are there many names to it? How do we give shape to that experience? How do we identify what it is that we're yearning for? So Chazal tell us, and this is on the same daf on Sach Sanhedrin, the clarification in the 11th parak of Chelek, where we discuss the Nakuda of Chelek Elokai Mimal and the emergence of Mashiach and the Sameach Bechelko and the Chelek Elokai Mimal. So the Gemara discusses Ma Shemo, what's his name? What's Mashiach's name? Debe Rabbi Shilo Amrei Shilo Shemo. The house of Rabbi Shilo said that Shilo is his name, like the pasuk says, Ad ki yavo Shilo, until Shilo arrives. Divrei Rabbi Yani Yomer Yonan Shemo. Rabbi Yanai says that his name is Yonan. Shenemar Yehi Shmo La'olam Lifnei Shemesh Yinun Shmo, as Rabbi Nachman brings down in the first teaching. Today, Rabbi Chanina Amrei Chanina Shemo. The house of Rabbi Chanina says Chanina is his name. Shenemar Asher Lo Iten Lahem Chanina. V'yesh Oimrim Menachem ben Chezkiyahu Shemo. Shenemar Ki Rachok Mimeni Menachem Meshav Nafshi. V'Rabbanan Amrei Chivira Debei Rabbi Shmei. Shenemar Achin Chayelinu Hu Nasa U'Machoivim Sivlam V'Anachnu Chashvenu Nagua Umuka Eloikim Umu'una. What is most incredible about this Gemara, as the Maharal points out in Netzach Yisrael, is that each and every Manda Amr, each and every person who's trying to understand what the name of Mashiach is ultimately reflecting on their own name, is ultimately reflecting on the source of who they are. Rav Yanai says Yinun. Rabbi Chanina says Chanina. Rav Shaila says Shiloh. Each one is seeing in redemption what they envision. They're envisioning themselves. They're envisioning the desire of their own heart. They're envisioning the ratzon ha'amuk that emerges out of the best of ourselves when we can tap in to that vulnerable place of emuna shlema, of ba'derech emuna b'charti. Each person knows what it is that they need in this world. Each person knows what they want from Hashem. Each person knows that innermost point. And when these tzaddikim are naming the name of Mashiach, what they're naming is themselves. They're naming the fact that I know what Mashiach is, and I'm giving a name to it. It's how I feel. It's the definitions of what I want to see redemption as. When it comes to individual redemption, when it comes to the movement away from stuckness into a breakthrough, each and every person is going to experience it through the subjective nature of their own heart. In the nature of the true tzaddikim, that when they speak, each and every person feels that they're being spoken to directly. As the Maharal describes, that when it comes to the all, each and every part is going to have the capacity to identify its part within the all, and therefore the all is going to appear as if it's shaped and shaded in the nature of that part. That the way that I grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that I reflect on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that I reflect on what I want most and what I want most intensely is ultimately going to be reflective of what I know to be most true in my inner heart. And the secret of bringing Mashiach and identifying the name of Mashiach is Mesiach, giving words to it, speaking it out with ourselves, with our friends, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Language, giving it names. This is the avodah of Adam Harishon, to give things names. When I give something a name, I give shape to it, I make it accessible. And Ish El Reyehu Ya'azoru Uli Achiv Yomar Chazak. We cannot uncover the Nakuda of Mashiach within ourselves until we begin to communicate about it. We begin to daven for it. We begin to ask for what we need. We begin to enunciate the words of what it is that we desire in redemption. How do I want to see redemption? What do I need to be redeemed from? And by giving words to it, by naming it, by the act of speaking it out, like Adam Arishon had the ability of giving names. We had the ability to give a name, Kavyachol, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The human being has the ability to give names because our graspability is always in relationship to our own most subjective grasp. And that's the secret of Mashamo. Each person is saying the name of Mashiach, which is reflective of their own name, because it's going to be Biyad HaNeviya Madama. It's going to be in the hands of the imagination. The Karve al Nafshi Giyala, the redemption of self, the redemption of self, the redemption of the mind, the emancipation of the mind from mental slavery, that emerges in the shape of what I determine it to be. And I need to learn how to give names to it. I need to learn how to identify and make manageable the goals that I would like to see in the redemptive process of the development of self. This secret of the name of Mashiach, this secret of the ability to name Mashiach, the awareness, the identification, and the directionality towards where I would like to see redemption emerge from. What is it that I need? What is it that I feel that I need? Because when I can identify what I feel that I need, I can daven on it. I can understand it. And it takes vulnerability to identify the fact that something's broken. It takes vulnerability to recognize that I need this Rabbanu Shlalem. I'm missing something. But that's the entire edifice of prayer. Prayer is rooted in the deficiency. Prayer is rooted in the recognition of Rachok Mimani Menachav Meshav Nafshi. The entire concept of prayer is that the Beis Hamikdash is missing and I am yearning for something. Every mitzvah is a gesture towards what we're yearning for. Yet it's difficult to admit the vulnerable recognition and the vulnerable awareness that I'm missing something. Rachok mimeni menachem meshav nafshi. And at that place, a person can begin to name what feels like that desolation in their life. The secret of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, as Rabbi Nachman points out in the introduction to his Chumash, to his Likutei Maran, is L'chu chazu mifalei Hashem asher sham shamos baretz. Come and see, come and behold the wondrous nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the power of Hashem, who has placed desolation in the land. And the Meforshim point out over there, what's desolation? Shmamos, desolation, something that is null and void. Rashi, the Malbim point out, Sham ma. What is there? What is there? There's nothing there. When I look at it, I see desolation. That's shemama. That's absence. That's no direction. That's no definition. That's no shape whatsoever. But Chazal, in a way that only Chazal can, reinterpret this understanding. And they say, Al tikra shamos. Don't read L'chu chazu mifalei Hashem asher sham shamos baretz. Don't read, look how wondrous is Hashem's power who has placed desolation and meaninglessness upon the land. Rather, transform that word of desolation and meaninglessness, transform that word into shemos, into names. Into names. Because the essential thing is identifying the name. The name is what makes something real. The name is what makes something objective. It gives me a goal. As long as I'm aware that it's still a subjective orientation to what I might consider as objective, and that my naming of things is ultimately dependent on my grasp ability to name what Mashiach means for me in this moment, and it bears no impact on what it should mean for the person next to me or the person next to me on the other side. As long as I can balance that secret of being all important and least important at the very same moment, of being, like we said, the nature of a dream, insignificant and hyper significant at the very same moment, Iker and Tafel at once, Iker and Tafel at once, at that place, at that place, what we encounter is the ability to name Mashiach, to give a name to the thing that we want to see emerge, to transform the desolation, that which appears to be without limit, that which appears to be without graspability, the shmama of it all, and transform that into the shame of Mashiach, the name of Mashiach, giving something a name. L'chu chazu mifalei Hashem asher sham shamos ba'aretz. Al tikra shamos el shemos. The koach of Mashiach is to give names, to identify and to shape where it is that I want to go. And this is a beginning of an understanding of what the second pasuk in the Torah is. The world was desolate, it was tohu vavohu, there was absence, it was shmama, there was nothing there, there was emptiness there was no definition, it was chaos within chaos. It caused an existential questioning. Nobody knew exactly what they wanted to be or where they wanted to go. Everything was upside down, topsy-turvy, even a hapachu, until V'ruach Elokim merachepes al pnei hamayim, until the Ruach Elokim, which Chazal tell us is the Rucho Shel Mashiach. The Ruach Shel Mashiach, which the Tzaddikim tell us is the Shmo Shel Mashiach. The Ruach, the spirit of what redemption means. What does it mean? It's the ability to settle the Tohu and the Vohu. The Tohu and the Vohu is the chaotic, meaningless, unidentifiable chaos of day-to-day experience. The riboy, the 1,000 things that the mind is occupied by in one moment to the next. The dizzying anxiety that opens up when a person pays too much attention to any one given thing. The feeling of love and homesickness and overpowering desire towards connection or disconnection. The intensity of being human. If we were to look at it, if we were to truly feel it, what we would encounter is the tohu vavohu. Tohu vavohu, not bad, just what is this? Bewilderment, a chaos, a decentering of self, an opening to the oceanic sense of unity where each and everything is combined, of hearing the voices and seeing the sounds. And therefore, what we need to do to settle that tohu vavohu is to give ourselves bite-sized, manageable directions towards Mashiach, and that happens through Ruach Elokim merachepes al pnei hamayim. Da Ruach Shel Mashiach, this is the name of Mashiach. Name it. Give a name to it. Identify what it is that you want, and then you have a way of getting there. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult to put into words what a person wants, which is where tefillah comes in. The shame of Mashiach emerges out of tefillah. It's the weapon of Mashiach. Hishem Hashem Ekra. It's the voice that we're crying out towards the name of where we want to direct ourselves, of what it is that I want to draw down into my life. And like we said in the name of the Maharal, it's always a reflection of where we're at. It's always a reflection of what I need right now. My desire for Mashiach and my desire for redemption internally right now might look very different than what it will look like an hour from now or a day from now. And that's okay, because a human is a fluid thing in perpetual process. But we must remember that everything is a perpetual state of ascension, and even the descent is for the sake of an ascent, which doesn't negate the experience or the feeling or the danger or the concern of a descent, but it contextualizes it, and it allows us to understand that this too is a process towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that everything is perpetually moving upwards. And when we begin to give names to the moments of Mashiach, when we begin to understand the Shmo Shel Mashiach, what is it that I want? It's then that I begin to have a possibility of a chakala b'chol yom sheyavo. I'm waiting for him now. Now I know how to get there. Now I know how to get and what I'm waiting for. And when a person knows what they're waiting for, ultimately you begin to taste the thing that you're waiting for in the act of waiting itself. And the secret of Shemo Shel Mashiach, the name of Mashiach, like we said, emerges from the innermost point of desire that rests hidden at the depths of one's heart, which is the chelik of Mashiach within them. That it's Tahom El Tahom Koreh, the part of Mashiach within me is calling out to the part of Mashiach that exists out there, and it's giving it a name. It's Tahom El Tahom Koreh, L'Kol Tzinorecha, Chol Meshabrecha V'Galecha Alay Avaru, that each and every depth, Laila Laila Yechevedas, the nighttime of Mashiach in me is crying out to the nighttime of Mashiach out there, trying to give it a name, calling it by a name, identifying what it is that I want. And when I can identify what it is that I want, what the innermost kernel of my desire is, that begins to be the thing that I root myself towards. I direct myself towards there. And this is why Shemo, Gematria 346, all of the Sarim point out, is the same Gematria as Ratzon. Because Tov Yatzar Kevod Lishmo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the entirety of the world so that his name can be revealed. Mashiach is just a revelation of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the shame of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu, Mahu Uma Shem Beno. What is the name? Moshe Rabbeinu is the emergence of Mashiach Tzidkenu because it represents that innermost point within each and every one of us where we recognize that Lo Yodea Ish Kfuraso. Ma va'anachnu ma. What is it? Is it up? Is it down? I don't know. All I know is that I can situate my ratzon there. The thing right above Shemo, which is 346, it's the same gematria as ratzon. It's the same gematria as ratzon. And Ratzon, desire, is ultimately going to be the identification of what Mashiach is for us in this moment. Where is it that I want to go? How do I set my desire and attach myself to the best parts of myself and uncover the direction towards which I want to root myself? And it's in that Ratzon, it's in that Rav, and it's in the best parts of myself that I'm able to identify the name of Mashiach. And I'm able to reflect on the deepest part of myself and uncover what the Kamarna demands of each and every one of us in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, to uncover the yichud of our name. Each and every yid has their own name. Each and every yid has their own DNA, their spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, psychological DNA that is singularly unique throughout the grand history of existence, and nobody else ever before or after can bring about the same rectifications and tikkunim and beautiful things for HaKadosh Baruch Hu that each and every one of us can bring about. And each and every one of us have our own names, and each and every one of us are writing our own books, which Rabbi Nachman says that each and every book is a name, sefer, and shem is the same gematria. And that's going to be the emergence of Mashiach Tzidkenu when he reads each and every one of our Sfarim to us, and it's going to be Niskala, to be a Megillas Esther. Each and every person has their own book, each and every person has their own name, and each and every person has their Achiza on Mashiach. And the avoida of uncovering the Vitebsker's room in our mind is using our desire and our ratzon to interpret our dream of Mashiach, to give shape to it through the cultivation of our desire. Hashem, help me identify what is best for me today. Help me get to that best place within myself. And through rooting and naming Mashiach over and over again, we give shape to the tohu and the vohu. We give ourselves the ability to extend ourselves outside of the chaos of this world and to root ourselves in that unchanging, fixed point of the Ruach Shamashiach that is Merachepes al Pnei Hamayim be'ezras Hashem.